Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamstram Shri Rupam Sajajatam Sagana Raghunata Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paridana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Radha Krishna Pada Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamstra Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Krupa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna everyone. So welcome to our study of chapter 17 in this Nectar of Devotion study. So we're very moving very quickly through this Nectar of Devotion. We are now in the third wave of this Eastern Ocean. If you remember, this whole Nectar of Devotion is broken up into 4 oceans, and each ocean has waves, and so we are in the third wave. So chapters 1 through 5 of this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu was a general description of devotional service. And then in chapters 6 through 16, we discussed the sadhana bhakti platform. And now that was the second wave. And in the third wave, Rupa Goswami is presenting Bhava Bhakti in chapters 17 and 18. And then in chapter 19, we'll enter the fourth wave of this Eastern Ocean, which is Prema Bhakti. So from Sadhana Bhakti to Bhava Bhakti to Prema Bhakti. And so last week, the last 2 weeks, we've been discussing a very important topic, which is this Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And we said that this Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti is giving us this, develop this intense desire to spontaneously serve Krishna, following in the footsteps of the eternal residents of Vrindavan. Those Ragatmika Bhaktas who have this deep attachment to naturally serve Krishna, and they have no other existence. So we established that from Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, if one desires, one can move from Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti to Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. This practice, keyword, practice of spontaneous devotion. And so by becoming aware and knowledgeable about this platform, it can then inspire our practice of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Right? And we explained very importantly that one who reaches Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti does not give up the Vaidhi principles. They continue to practice the Vaidhi principles, but they internally meditate on their spontaneous mood of service. So that was Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, and we discussed last time that this Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he taught the process of devotional service, he was teaching how to go from Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti to Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti to Bhava Bhakti, which is where we are today. But as we discussed last time, you can reach Bhava Bhakti directly from Vaidhi Bhakti. So whether we go from Vaidhi Bhakti to Bhava Bhakti or through Raganuga, that is based on one's desire and plan. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu specifically was giving the path, and thus in Chaitanya Charitamrita we see such description of Raganuga Bhakti, and of course he instructed Rupa Goswami to present this nectar of devotion and to explain this very important topic to us. So we're very fortunate to have that. Now, we discussed way back in chapter 1 that the goal of sadhana bhakti is to awaken bhava bhakti. And so the purpose of sadhana is to bring about this bhava bhakti. Right? So we discussed in the first chapter that the characteristics, there were 6 characteristics awarded to the practitioner, 2 in sadhana bhakti, 2 in bhava bhakti, and 2 more in prema bhakti. Right? And in bhava bhakti, one acquires both the sadhana bhakti characteristics and the 2 additional bhava bhakti characteristics. So we said the 2 characteristics awarded in bhava bhakti were that it is sudarlabha, rarely achieved, and we're going to see today why that is the case. And 2, moksha lagrutakrit, that it is so ecstatic and so much happiness in bhava bhakti that even liberation, the prospect of going back home to the spiritual world, seems very insignificant compared to the happiness achieved in actually rendering devotional service on the platform of bhava bhakti. So we're going to discuss today how to awaken this bhava bhakti, what it is, and next week we're going to discuss 9 very precise characteristics of one who has bhava bhakti, so that we can, set some goalposts for what we are trying to achieve. So today we'll spend more time understanding bhava bhakti and how to achieve it. And we saw this verse earlier, Kriti sadhyat bhava sadhya bhava sadhana nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakuta mridya sadhyate. That the goal of sadhana bhakti is to awaken this dormant love of God. It is lying dormant in the heart. And that is the goal of sadhana bhakti, is to awaken that. And that begins with bhava bhakti. Right? So what is bhava bhakti? Bhava bhakti is when one is spontaneously very eager to serve in an ecstatic mood. So again, spontaneous we see again here, right? So one is naturally inclined. But it is devotional service in ecstasy. Prabhupada gives the title of chapter, Ecstatic Love. That there is such an experience in this practice of bhava bhakti that there is an ecstatic experience, so much happiness, right? And so we must understand that this bhava bhakti, it is on the perfectional stage. It is at the siddha stage, this perfect stage of bhakti, right? We are either a sadhaka or a siddha. We can delineate that way. So sadhana bhakti is on the practice stage, the attempt to become perfect. Bhava bhakti and prema bhakti are on the perfectional stage. So this, once one reaches bhava bhakti, one is considered to have reached the perfectional stage. They are at the uttama adhikari level. So this bhava bhakti is devotional service in pure goodness, the shuddha sattva. And we'll discuss shuddha sattva, the Lord's internal potency, very clearly. This is, much higher than the sattva gun, just the material mode of goodness. That is within the material realm. Right? And why is Bhava Bhakti considered on a perfectional stage? We said, wait a minute, Krishna Prema, that's the ultimate goal. Well, because once one achieves Bhava Bhakti, Prema Bhakti is right behind it. It's coming immediately. It is almost like it's guaranteed. Right? The path from Sadhana Bhakti to Bhava Bhakti is quite long. But from Bhava Bhakti, Prema Bhakti is just behind it. It is just a matter of time. It is guaranteed. It is considered the budding stage of Prema. Just like when you have a flower and there's a bud, you know very soon a flower will come. So like that, Bhava Bhakti is the budding stage of Prema Bhakti. And Prabhupada gives the example of the sun rays. When you see the sun rays in the morning, before you see the sun, you see the sun rays, okay, the sun is momentarily coming. Like that, Bhava Bhakti is like the sun rays of Krishna Prema. So that is why it's considered on the perfectional stage. And when does Bhava Bhakti occur? When does it happen? When the heart is completely purified. It is past Anartha Nivritti, much past it. After Anartha Nivritti, one becomes Nishta, fixed. Then one has the taste, Ruchi. Then one becomes addicted, attached, a Shakti. Then Bhava comes. So several steps even beyond Anartha Nivritti. And the reason that it is quite advanced, very far, is that the heart must be very pure to manifest Bhava Bhakti. The container of the heart, the container that is the heart, I should say, must be appropriate. Like if you want to hold some hot milk, you will not hold it in a leaf cup container. That container is not appropriate to hold hot milk. Okay? Similarly, to hold love of God within the heart, we must prepare the container of the heart. So the heart must become very pure, and we'll see it must also become very soft. Right? Then this attachment to Krishna is there, and spontaneous ecstasy can begin. Okay? So we said how high Bhava Bhakti is. After completely purifying from the heart, then one becomes steady in devotional service. And that steadiness, that fixed, nothing else enters the consciousness, leads one to acquire the taste, the ruchi of the holy names. And that taste is so sweet, so strong, that one becomes addicted. They cannot get enough of it. Millions of tongues they desire, and millions of ears they desire, because it's so addicting. Then, after that Ashakti stage, Bhava Bhakti comes. Right? The mind so naturally attracted and pulled to Krishna, not even a second away. And Bhava Bhakti is beyond even that stage of Ashakti. So we can just understand that it is a very elevated platform. But by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we are being given the instruction how to achieve. Very simply, we think climbing Mount Everest is some very great activity. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving us how to awaken this Bhava Bhakti and ultimately Prema Bhakti. And the principal instruction is attentive chanting. When we saw that the 5 potent angas, right? Just a small attachment to the 5 potent angas can awaken this Bhava Bhakti. Now we have maybe some appreciation of what that meant. The 5 angas that we do every day in Mangalarti has the potency to awaken this very high stage of Bhava Bhakti. Right? So now let's discuss the primary characteristics of Bhava Bhakti, and then we'll discuss the secondary characteristics. So the primary characteristic of Bhava Bhakti is that it is the stage in which the heart is illuminated, like the sun, with the Lord's Shuddha Sattva potency. It means that the Shuddha Sattva potency enters the heart. Now the key is, where does it come from? You go to Amazon and buy a bottle of Shuddha Sattva potency? Sorry, it doesn't exist. Only Krishna can give us this specific energy to achieve this position. It is bestowed upon us, and that is very, very important. No one but Krishna can give this. And he either directly gives it or through his devotees he gives it, but only ultimately can come from Krishna. And that is why it is Sudarlabha, rarely achieved. And why Krishna is the gatekeeper, holds the keys to this Shuddha Sattva potency? Because, as we said earlier, in the very beginning, that when one reaches Prema Bhakti, Sri Krishna Karshani, that is one of the characteristics. It means one can control Krishna. The love of the pure devotee is so powerful that it can even control the supreme controller. Now that we cannot wrap our heads around. But Krishna succumbs to the desires of his devotees. So Krishna, he really eagerly wants to bestow it, but he doesn't until one is very purified and has the perfect motive. You know, will you allow somebody to tie your hands unless you have complete and implicit trust in that person? You know their motive is pure and perfect. So like that, this characteristic of Bhava Bhakti comes by the entering of the Shuddha Sattva potency into the heart, and that potency can only come from Krishna, and Krishna may give it through his devotee, but it comes from Krishna, and he withholds it because of its power to even control. So this is the primary characteristic that is fully illuminated with this Shuddha Sattva potency. That is the main characteristic of Bhava Bhakti. And it is like, a dormant seed. A dormant seed cannot sprout until it is touched by the power of the sun rays. It cannot grow. Similarly, the Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti is lying dormant in our heart. And when Krishna's Shuddha Sattva potency touches that seed, then it begins to fructify. Then it can be awakened. Without it, we have no hope to awaken this Bhava Bhakti. So that is very, very important. So this, before I get to the aspects of Shuddha Sattva, what is the nature of Bhava? It comes out that there is no other desires in the heart. It completely permeates one's consciousness. This spontaneous desire to serve in ecstasy. It becomes one's whole existence. Nothing else, single-minded. And, Rupa Goswami gives the example of the iron rod. When you put an iron rod in fire, that iron rod itself becomes like fire. If you touch that hot iron rod to another piece of wood, it will light. The iron rod absorbs the full qualities. It becomes almost non-different from fire. So like that, when one has Bhava Bhakti, their consciousness, their mind, it all becomes fully absorbed in Krishna. It's completely attached and absorbed. That is the nature. So, and as we said, it comes after a Shakti when this addictive state. So very, very higher than even attachment is this Bhava Sattva. So now the Shuddha Sattva. What is it? There are two parts to the Shuddha Sattva potency. And we should understand this because we should develop the process of begging Krishna for this potency. Because then we can awaken this ecstatic love. And I'll talk more about that at the end. So the first is this Haladini Shakti. In celebrating the pastimes and the appearance of Srimati Radharani, we understand that Radharani is the personification of this Haladini potency. But what is this Haladini potency? This is the devotional or loving energy. It is the pleasure-giving potency. And this potency is required to be able to purely love Krishna and experience the bliss of bhakti. When we have this ability that we cannot live even a moment without Krishna, because we're so much ecstatic in mood, that is because we have now acquired this Haladini Shakti from Krishna. Without it, we cannot experience the full bliss of Krishna. So that is the first part of Shuddha Shattva. And the second part is the Samvit potency. This potency is to know Krishna. We are trying to understand the inconceivable. Krishna is unknowable. We can know just but a fraction of him. But if he bestows his knowledge potency, then we can understand him to some degree. And when knowledge of Krishna comes, and this Haladini Shakti, this loving potency comes in the heart, when they combine, then one can relish Krishna for who he is, this supreme loving personality with these amazing pastimes. So it is these two potencies that give us the ability, right? Potency means, it means some ability. That ability cannot come on our own, but it can be bestowed upon us by Krishna. And this is the primary characteristic of Bhava Bhakti, that the heart has received this Shuddha Shattva potency. So this platform, again, is bestowed when the pure devotee is on a very high and elevated platform, beyond Nishta, beyond Anartha Nivritti, beyond Ruchi, beyond even Ashakti. Right? They are begging and crying for Krishna, for more and more. They cannot live without Krishna. Then, if Krishna desires, he gives the Shuddha Shattva potency. But it is bestowed when one is so attached that they are begging and crying for it. Then he will give it. Either he gives it himself or through his pure devotee. So the first key is one must have an intense desire for it. If we're casual about it, it'd be nice, then Krishna will wait a little bit longer. For that casual desire to mature into, I have to have it. And we've had so many I have to have it desires in our life. But this is the real have to have it desire we're trying to awaken. And that comes from executing our Vaidhi sadhana principles very wonderfully and sincerely. And when it does, it energizes the heart, the seed of prema fructifies, and this bhava bhakti becomes manifest. So our sadhana is what qualifies us. How? By intensifying this desire to serve Krishna. It purifies the heart of all other desires, so that the desire to serve Krishna spontaneously in this mood of ecstasy can become first and foremost and the exclusive desire. And it is our sadhana that prepares the container of the heart to receive the Shuddha Shattva, to make it our only desire. Right? So then Krishna will bestow it. So we have to understand then it is the practice of sadhana that will bring about this desire and ultimately the begging of Krishna to bring this mercy to all of us. So this is very, very important. We cannot overstate it. We can say it so many different ways. We'll say it a few more ways at the end. So now the secondary characteristic is that one has a very soft heart. What does a soft heart mean? That I can just squeeze it? No, that is not a soft heart. That is figurative. In actual sense, it means that the heart is easily moved by emotion. Okay? And the soft heart must be there because in order to receive the Shuddha Shattva potency, the heart must be softened. Just like if you have a needle and you have some fluids in it. If you try to inject it into a stone, can you inject the needle into it? But if you try to inject that needle into a ripe, softened mango, it very easily goes in and enters. So like that, we can understand that the heart must become very soft in order to receive the Shuddha Sattva potency. A hardened heart is unmoved by emotions, but a soft heart can very easily be changed. And when the heart is very soft, all the different types of spiritual tastes manifest. And this exhibition of ecstatic symptoms become manifest. Right? Here when we taste the sweet pastimes of Krishna, because of this soft heart, one visibly becomes moved by hearing these pastimes. One is tasting them and they become moved and they become tearful and emotional, and the heart starts to beat and they're shivering and the hairs are standing on end. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is praying for this in the Shastashtakam prayer. When will my hairs stand on end at the recitation of your holy names? This is one of the symptoms of Bhava Bhakti. Right? And these symptoms, we must understand, they occasionally manifest in Bhava Bhakti. In Prema Bhakti, they become fully manifest. Okay? So this is the secondary quality, characteristic of Bhava. Now, importantly, how to get it. And this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is teaching us. That is why we must and should very thoroughly study Chaitanya Charitamrita, this nectar of devotion, nectar of instruction, the teachings of the six Goswamis. Because this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give us, the highest of all gifts. So one way to get it is by constant association with the pure devotee and practicing sadhana. And the second way is by the special mercy of Krishna. So the first way, by this constant association with the pure devotee, constant being a very key word. And when we associate with the pure devotee, it means there is practice of sadhana. Right? That is what happens. The pure devotee is constantly engaged in hearing and chanting, and our association brings us to intense practice of hearing and chanting. But this association with the pure devotee should bring about this intensity of practice, not just hanging out, being in the physical vicinity. No, but to inspire intense practice. And sometimes we have this experience, right? When the spiritual master is in town and there's an opportunity to be in association or rendering service. There's like this intensity of desire. It becomes accentuated. Right? That is what should naturally happen. And when we remain in constant association, it means one will practice their sadhana very strongly. And then what happens? We purify. Purification is the key to allow this container of the heart to be ready to receive the Shuddha Shakti potency. And purifying of the desires will allow us to have the intense desire to serve. Otherwise we'll be deluded. So how that happens? By the sadhana principles. And the sadhana is inspired by the pure devotee. So it is by the constant association that one can receive this Bhava Bhakti. Right? Again, the association means doing great devotional service. And the story of Narada Muni is a given in this nectar devotion. Narada Muni was associating with these great devotees, rendering service to them, honoring their Mahaprasad. And it is by that service, hearing, and chanting that he acquired Bhava Bhakti. So that is the principal way. Now the second way is by the special mercy of Krishna. Krishna can, out of the blue we can say, is not out of the blue, but we can understand, that can bestow Bhava Bhakti. It is very uncommon and exceptionally rare. Okay? So, Srila Prabhupada comments that this is like expecting to get a degree from a university, not by attending the university, but by hoping for an honorary degree. Technically it can happen, but the likelihood is not very high. How many people receive an honorary degree versus those who receive the actual degree? So this special mercy of Krishna, it can happen, but it is very rare. So our recommended path is to work for it through constant association. But now let us understand that the mercy to even do our sadhana also comes by Krishna. The mercy to come in association with the pure devotee is also from Krishna. So it is not that in path 1 we have no mercy of Krishna. No, we are fully living on the mercy of Krishna. But the special mercy to receive Bhava Bhakti is what is being indicated here. Right? So we cannot even do our work without the mercy of Krishna. So there are two paths to achieve this Bhava Bhakti, and it is by the direct process of association. The second is by the special mercy. Now, there are two paths to achieve Bhava Bhakti, and this is very important. One can go from Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti directly to Bhava Bhakti. And the second path to Bhava Bhakti is from Vaidhi Bhakti to Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti to Bhava Bhakti. So, Vaidhi Bhakti to Bhava Bhakti, Vaidhi to Raganuga to Bhava. So there are two paths. And again, as I mentioned earlier, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving us this path of through Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And that is why 2 chapters were dedicated to explaining this topic, to help ensure that the practitioner is aware, and then it is up to us to decide. And Vaidhi Bhakti to Bhava Bhakti to Prema Bhakti can take one to the Vaikuntha Loka. But to enter Goloka Vrindavan, to enter the pastimes of the Ragatmika Bhaktas, remember, Raganuga Bhaktas follow the Ragatmika Bhaktas. One must go from Vaidhi Bhakti to Raganuga Bhakti, then to Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. So, this path through Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti is what brings one ultimately to Goloka Vrindavan. And this is explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita, specifically Adi Leela chapter 3. Okay? So just a very important point, that there are two paths to Bhava Bhakti, and the choice is ours. So now, just to summarize this very important chapter, that the key is purification of the heart. And what are we trying to purify of? All of our material desires. Any desire besides desire to serve Krishna. All of our envy, lust, greed, pride, anger, and all of our different attachments. So that is very, very important. We are trying to purify. The second key point is that Bhava Bhakti is only attainable by the mercy of Krishna. He has to agree to give it, and then he will give it to us, either directly or through one of his devotees. It cannot be we can do our sadhana for life immemorial, but if Krishna does not agree to give it, we'll not get it. So it is not achievable by our own effort. Sadhana does not automatically result in Bhava Bhakti. This Shuddha Sattva potency must be bestowed upon us. But sadhana bhakti is the process to purify, so that we can develop the intense desire for it. When Krishna sees intense desire, then he'll give it. We may ask, well, if Krishna is the only key, when he'll give it to me? When there is a really intense desire. And we know, if we're going to remember one thing from this whole nectar of devotion, one thing, we should know this, that the intensity of our desire is the ticket to our success. If there's one thing we're going to remember, that is it. That this strong desire is the key, and it's not easily achieved. Right? Just going through the motions will not awaken this strong desire. And, we said that one must strongly covet the position of even Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Right? And that happens after Anartha Nivritti. Because remember, I gave the example previously, that strong desires, if I have 10 desires in the heart, then I can give 10% to each of those desires. So my desires are split. My energy is split amongst my 10 desires. So when I'll become strongly desiring Krishna, when I have no other desires in the heart, then all 100% of my consciousness, I only want Krishna. And that only comes when we purify. And how to purify? Sadhana. So we must develop a goal of our sadhana. And so this comes to the important point that I want to conclude with. That we have to approach our sadhana with a clear goal and objective. If our goal is just to finish our chanting, then that's what we'll reach. But if our goal is to awaken Bhava Bhakti in our heart, then that's what we'll ultimately reach. Right? We study hard in school. So much effort. So much obstacles we overcome. And what is our motivating factor? It is ultimately a paycheck. Because we know by studying hard in school I'll get a degree. And by a degree I'll get a job. And by a job I'll get a paycheck. It is that paycheck that inspires all of that hard effort. And what is so special about that paycheck? We know it brings about money. It is money, sorry. That brings about so-called happiness. Right? So many years in the future, we know it'll come. It inspires our hard work today because we have strong faith in that paycheck. So if we don't know about that paycheck in the future, we can't properly apply ourselves in school. But when we have faith in it, then we properly apply ourselves. So in doing our sadhana, if we don't firmly understand the paycheck of bhakti, which is this bhava bhakti, if we don't have a firm grasp of that, as strong as our grasp is of the material paycheck, then the practice of our sadhana, rising early even if we are tired, focusing the mind though there are so many other things to think about, being steadfast in our practices. How we became steadfast in school? Confidence in the paycheck. How we'll become steadfast in our sadhana? Confidence in the greatness of bhava bhakti. Then we can intensify our efforts. Otherwise, without knowledge and faith in this bhava bhakti and ultimately prema bhakti, it is difficult to intensify the efforts of our sadhana. So, if every day we are approaching our sadhana with the strong desire to awaken this bhava bhakti, then it will come. And that is the mindset we have to try to develop. And what is so great about bhava bhakti? We achieve happiness so extreme that even the happiness of liberation seems very small. That is the moksha lagutrakrit. That seems very insignificant because I have achieved so much happiness. There's an ecstasy beyond comparison. What ecstasy I can get from a material paycheck. We have tried that. So the goal here is to intensify our desire for it. And that is the key to success. It's the key to success in everything. And so, by studying this nectar devotion, it should inspire our sadhana from a very mechanical sadhana to an intensified, objective, purposeful sadhana. Then we'll find success. And this is the conclusion of nectar devotion, to awaken this Krishna prema in our heart. And how to do it? We've been given all the principles, and now the consciousness, trying to develop this intense desire. So that is the chapter 17, ecstatic love. And next week we'll discuss the characteristics of someone who has achieved bhava bhakti. How do we know? And Rupa Goswami is going to give us 9 characteristics in that. Okay, I'll pause here. Any questions or discussion? Okay. Uh,
Hare Krishna.
yes, brother.
So, Prabhu, I have a question. I understand from Vaidhi Bhakti to Raganuga Bhakti or just doing sadhana, it's intentional and we can be following rules and regulations. What I'm not able to understand is that when we get to the stage of Raganuga, uh, spontaneity, and the element of spontaneity yet seems like we have to keep controlling ourselves to Ragatmika. I mean, how would a devotee at the Raganuga Bhakti stage or Bhava stage will know, oh, now I'm at this stage and I gotta focus on following the associates in Vrindavan so that I can get to Ragatmika. I mean, it's kind of not intuitive to me that if you're spontaneous, how would one control that
Hmm.
and go from one stage to another?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's a technical question, but it's a practical one. It's a good. So the remember that Raghunaga Sadhana Bhakti doesn't come until Anartha Nivriti, right? So the anarthas, the impurities of the heart, have all been removed. So thus, one's spontaneous inclinations take one to the right place. We don't have to think, shall I serve this way or shall I do that way? So that the natural inclination becomes pure. Right now, if I look at my natural inclinations, they're contaminated by my anarthas, right? So I'm on the wrong path. Because if I follow the anartha, the contaminated heart that's guiding me in one way or the other, then I'm not going to be in the right path. That's why I have to follow the principles. I have to make sure, oh, don't forget to chant your rounds. You must go to the temple, must hear Srimad Bhagavatam, right? We have these principles that we hold. That's our guiding principle to make sure I'm not off track. That is inviting. But when we come to Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, one is purified of all of the anarthas, the impurities of the heart. At least we can say most of them. We know we're not fully free until Bhava Bhakti, but we are purified of the vast majority of them. And so the spontaneous inclinations now we have are safe to follow. Right now, our spontaneous inclinations are not safe to follow, so we must follow the rules and regulations as inspired by Guru and Shastra. But when we purify, now I can follow the heart. And the heart is the when the Raganuga develops is when one has awakened this attraction to the Ragatmika devotees by hearing about the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, by hearing about the associates. One has developed this spontaneous inclination. Now remember, every living entity has an eternal position. So it's there within the heart, it is dormant. So it will spontaneous develop, and then one naturally follows that devotee in Vrindavan. One doesn't think, oh, I have to be careful, I don't stop following. It just happens because one is, again, spontaneously inclined. And by that, one will elevate to Nishta, Ruchi, Ashakti, and ultimately to Bhava Bhakti. And again, when we're at the Bhava Bhakti, now one is perfected. When one has achieved a perfected stage, there is no prospect of falling down. That is perfected. So now one follows according to one's pure position. Remember, we are part and parcel of Krishna. So our natural consciousness is pure and perfect. And so everything one does is pure and perfect. There's no need, oh, do I do it this way or do I do it that way? In Goloka Vrindavan, nobody is referring to, guidebooks in the beginner's guide to Krishna consciousness. What verse do I chant when I put tilaka? No, everybody is perfected. Right? So there's no scope to get off track. Did that answer the question, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. That makes sense.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Even some feedback or opposite
Hare Krishna,
realizations?
Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, as we have seen these different levels of bhakti, I want to know, is there an information where how are the senses connected to these levels?
Mm.
Like, so it's just to understand, to see how our senses
Mm.
play within these bhakti range. So
Yeah. Remember, the senses are a vehicle, right? They're a vehicle to different activities, right? The senses are material in the sense that they're pieces of machinery, right? The eye is a piece of machinery that can see things. The tongue is a piece of machinery that can speak things. So the senses become engaged in Krishna as one goes in sadhana bhakti, one is engaging the senses mechanically or under the guidance of Guru and Shastra in Krishna consciousness. In bhava bhakti and prema bhakti, one is engaging the senses naturally. But the senses themselves don't necessarily change. We say they purify. The senses purified, meaning the activities that the senses engage in are purified, right? And ultimately, like the eyes, when one purifies the eyes, one can then see with their eyes Krishna. When the pure devotee sees the deity, they don't see stone; they see Krishna. And you may have your own experience. How you saw the deity the first time you saw them, and now how you see the deity. Some difference is there, right? Some deeper consciousness and realization is there. Well, like that, your senses will purify and purify and ultimately to see. When you hear about Krishna's pastimes, the first time we heard to now, it's a different level. And ultimately, when you hear, you will become directly associating with Krishna. The hearing is so profound and deep that it overwhelms the consciousness. So, like that, that is the senses mature up until their pure state, right? So, in the spiritual world, we have senses too, but those are spiritual senses. Is that okay, Prabhu?
yeah, Prabhu, like kind of, yeah, maybe we need to relate, as you said. Maybe the few things which you said was giving some kind of example.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the key is how we use the senses, right? That as we progress in the stages of bhakti, how we use them and how intensively we use them. Right? That is again, it is a vehicle to a goal. You can use the senses for bhakti. You can use the sense for material activities.
Yeah.
Okay? So as we progress, we know how to actually use them. Because remember, Rishikesha, Krishna is known as Rishikesha. What does that mean? He owns my senses. He owns your senses. He is the master of them. You are not the master of them. So they should be engaged in Him. And that is what we are in the process of trying to do. Right now we engage the senses in so many things because of anartha that are present in the heart.
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavanam.
Okay.
Hare Prabhuji, I have two couple of questions rather. One is the part like the Shuddha Sattva you said is required to awaken the dormant seed of prema, right?
Yes.
Now, Haladini Shakti is one of the parts of the Shuddha Sattva. So I'm thinking like, so that means that in Bhava Bhakti stage, uh, you need Shuddha Sattva, and which and one of the ingredients is Haladini Shakti, which is being bestowed by Krishna with his mercy. But I thought Haladini Shakti, which is the pleasure potency of Krishna, and I thought that Radharani has got the exclusive uh, power over that Haladini Shakti. I was not knowing that other pure devotees will also be bestowed the Hladini Shakti? Could you explain that?
Yeah. No. So yeah, slightly different. So okay, let me back up a little. What is Shakti? Shakti is energy, right? So Shakti is an energy, and Krishna has unlimited energies, but he has different categories of energy. And two of the categories of energy are this Haladini Shakti and Sambit Shakti, right? And then there's a Sandini Shakti, right? The eternal principle. So there's these different categories, but he has unlimited energies. Now, Srimati Radharani is the personification of the Haladini Shakti. She is the exclusive personification of the Haladini Shakti. But then she herself expands herself into all the gopis. So Radharani is not the exclusive holder of the Haladini Shakti, but she is the personification of it. And then she expands herself. And this Haladini Shakti then is bestowed into the heart of the pure devotee. The devotee does not become the Haladini Shakti. That is Radharani. But the pure devotee receives some of this energy. And this energy is what allows us to experience the happiness in bhakti. It allows us, in some ways, you can say, to taste the sweetness of Krishna. Without this, it doesn't fully come. So this is one is bestowed the ability, we can say, another way, to experience the happiness and bliss of Krishna. So without it, you can't experience it. Just like, if I'll use a very mundane example. If you go to a movie and, not a mundane, you go to a movie and it's a 3D movie. If you don't have those special glasses, you can't experience the 3D-ness of that movie, right? You don't have the equipment needed. So like that, the Haladini Shakti is what's needed to experience the real bliss of bhakti. That's when the ecstasy can come. You can have some taste before that, but the full ecstasy comes with this potency. So that energy enters the heart, but one does not become, a personified Haladini Shakti. That is Radharani's exclusive position. Right? But she is sharing this energy in some way. That's not, fully shasta, but I'm saying it in a fun way. But one acquires, and that's why actually we approach our devotion through Srimati Radharani. A devotion comes. Is that clarified, Mataji, or can I?
Yes, yeah, wonderfully explained actually. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And there was one more question. I'm just thinking what it was. Basically, I'm trying to understand, Prabhuji, if you can explain, what is the stark difference between the Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti and the Bhava Bhakti? Because I know the one is the intensity and the spontaneity, right? So
Yep.
now, as we understand, in Sadhana Bhakti also, one gets sometimes those even festival times, you get that feeling that you want to do more and more,
Yeah.
and just the body may not support, but still you want to do. So you get those flashes, right?
Yeah.
And then spontaneous. Then we come to Raghunaga Sadhana Bhakti. Then you feel that the feeling of spontaneity is increasing, and then Bhava Bhakti, you are, I think, almost always spontaneous and naturally inclined. But what is how can I differentiate between the two?
You- because you have that question, Rupa Goswami must be very dear to you, because that's what he discusses in the next chapter. It's very nice, but I'll just touch on it, because actually chapter 18 is one of my favorite chapters in Nectar of Devotion. It's a very sweet, but it explains the position, the characteristics of Bhava Bhakti, and what we'll see is that the eagerness, the hope against hope, this attraction, it's very, very intensified. So in Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, one has cleared Anartha Nivriti, and they are beginning to become fixed, and the taste is developing, and this attachment is there, a Shakti, right? Up to a Shakti. But by the time one reaches Bhava Bhakti, the spontaneity is so much more pronounced, and it is extreme in its experience. So, it's like, again, I'm just using some mundane examples to help us illustrate it. Right? If I step outside and I'm in the sunlight, I'm experiencing the sunlight. But if I board a rocket ship and I make my way towards the sun, as I progress towards the sun, I'm experiencing that sunlight in much more powerful means. So in some ways we can understand that the as we progress, it's not necessarily like a marked different experience. It's a acceleration and an enhancement and an accentuation of that experience. So in Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, there is spontaneous devotion, but still yet the ecstatic experience is not there. Right? So one is spontaneously inclined, but the ecstasy is not there. What the ecstasy? There's the tears are flowing, the shivering, the hair standing on end, right? And if you study Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll see these very ecstatic symptoms manifested by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? They're almost inconceivable when we read about them. So that is not yet developed in Raghunaga Sadhana Bhakti. So they're both spontaneous, but not as intensified, and it sort of develops. And again, next week we'll discuss these characteristics of this ecstatic love, and how it is there. So that's the distinction. But it's not like black and white. There are gradations as we go. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. And last question.
Yeah.
I know you said Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, if your anartha is at anartha nivritti stage. So basically your anarthas have almost gone. Almost, right? And then Bhava Bhakti, the main criteria of Bhava Bhakti is your heart should be completely pure and purified. Now, anartha nivritti and heart purity, isn't it something similar? So what is like anartha nivritti? Your anartha nivritti will take place when your heart gets purified.
Yeah, so that's why that technical clarification was made, I think, 2 classes ago, that anartha nivritti is, almost full, completely. We can understand it. When we speak in general terms, we say anartha nivritti means free of all anarthas. And that is practically correct. But technically speaking, there are still some lingering anartha. And that's why from anartha nivritti to nishta to ruchi to ashakti, we're still in the sadhana principles. Once you reach bhava, you're fully purified. And we'll discuss that actually also next week a little bit. That we fully purified, and now you're completely free. Absolutely, not even a speck. Just like if you are dusting in your house. You can dust, and you say, I've dusted, I've removed all the dust. But there might be a speck or two of dust left. But you can practically say, I've removed the dust. Right? So like in that way we can understand anartha nivritti. Anartha nivritti means, yeah, I'm free of anarthas. But still there are some tiny specks. And if I don't continue, that's why it is not until Bhava Bhakti we're considered at the perfectional stage. Up until Ashakti, we're still in the sadhana stage. Then at Bhava we have achieved the perfectional stage. So that the last tiny, tiny, tiny tinges of anarthas are removed. Right? So that's the distinction. But we can understand for all intents and purposes that anartha nivritti is removing of all the anarthas. But just understand there's a technical slight distinction, just using maybe that dusting analogy.
Thank you, Prabhuji, and you make all these so difficult concepts so simple by your lecture, and we are able to understand it well. Thank you so much. We are very grateful to you. Hare Krishna.
This is all being repeated what has been spoken by others, particularly these lectures by Borijan Prabhu. I'm eternally grateful to him, because he has given this knowledge in such a digestible way. It is why on Srila Prabhupada Vyasvajaya often we try to read his offering, because I'm very grateful to him. He has given this knowledge in such a digestible manner. So just trying to repeat his style, and so but grateful that something is happening, and we can pray that we can develop this intense desire and become purposeful in our sadhana. That is the goal of actually this Nectar devotion, to establish a purposeful approach to our sadhana. Okay. Anything else? So thank you very much. So next week we'll discuss chapter 18 and continue our discussion of Baba Bhakti. Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki.